And we are live tonight on Days on Day Games. That's my way of saying, um, hey folks, I'm back. Sorry for the, big hiatus. As I had mentioned in my, what was it, Hunt Showdown video, um, this was not planned. I got very sick. Um, like really, really sick. Now, as a man who constantly reminds you folks that I have an eating disorder, um, being sick is not fun for me because that manifests itself through incredible amounts of nausea. And that nausea manifests itself in aversion to food. I couldn't stand the scent, nor sight, nor even thought of food. It's a miracle I didn't purge. That is not to say I was of sound mind, because when I am sick, I get really warm, and when I'm really warm, I get really loopy. So I couldn't make any content. And the Hunt Showdown video was just like a quick patch job to put something out there. I felt guilty for not uploading, even though I'm not even sure I have what you can really call a fan base, but um, I am proud of what I managed to accomplish. So we're back. Tonight we are going to be talking about steampunk. Now, folks, I'll level with you. The original idea was to go on about cosmic horror because me and a friend, me and a good pal, good buddy of mine, I took a picture with this guy when we graduated. Love him, great guy. Uh, me and a friend were talking about Annihilation because he recently saw it for a cosmic horror class he's doing it. And oh my god, we gushed about it. One of my favorite cosmic horror videos, and that inspired me to cover cosmic horror. So I asked him for any suggestions, the points to go in particular, because he's especially because he's had the class where he's like supposed to break down these like stories and films. And the dude had so much to say, amazing ideas, to the point where I am conscripting him to be the first ever co-op video I'm doing, where I will like eventually bring him on, maybe from the start, who knows, and we'll have like a back and forth. You'll get like a bigger range of ideas, even though we're pretty similar in how we go about approaching stories, I do think, but I think it'd be great fun. So eventually I'll have my bro on here for that video, but that we'll record that sometime over the weekend. He actually has classes, he has a life, I don't. So instead, I had to quickly make a back burner topic. Not that I'm disheartened that, oh no, I must make a back burner topic. No, that lets me like gather up ideas, get my thoughts in order. I have so much to say on cosmic horror. I have so much to say on cosmic horror. I also have to say this. If you've never seen John Carpenter's The Thing, if you've never seen Annihilation, please watch those films at your earliest convenience. They are amazing films. Anyway, so we're here to do steampunk. Now, again, as I was going to say, steampunk isn't like first of all, I want you to stretch. I want you to check your posture. I want you to eat healthy, and I want you to drink water and shower. And second of all, I want you to recall I don't really buy things. That being said, I was looking at buying the Southern Reach trilogy, which is what Annihilation is based on. I will have to look into if I'll love them. However, I think I will. Reddit, Jeff Vandermeer's Southern Reach trilogy. I don't get it. I'm extremely bored. What are you on about? Hold on. Dense text? Ooh. Let me just really quickly, I'm sorry, but can anyone explain what it's about, what the themes are? Oh my god, kill yourself. No, no, no. Oh, I scrolled down and I was like, oh, but I haven't read that book yet, but it's my understanding that, motherfucker, there's a spoiler text. You should get a spoiler text that. Don't just put the spoilers there. Whatever. Thankfully I didn't read it. I actually am looking into buying the entire trilogy because I don't know something about. Oh wow, the cover art's beautiful. I know the movie and the books are very quite different. However, is this 20 books for is this 20 bucks for the first book or $20 for the trilogy? Uh, Annihilation, Authority, Acceptance, the Southern Reach series. Single volume hardcover. Okay, so this is just for the first book. Why is paperback more expensive than hardcover? That's odd. Absolution. Wait, does that say four? Oh, did he make a fourth book recently? Apologies for getting very distracted. Book four of the Southern Reach. Oh, wow, it's no longer a trilogy. It's a quadrilogy. Yeah, Annihilation, Authority, Acceptance, Absolution. I like the A theme he has going on here. Oh my good lord, that is an expensive hardcover. Why is the third one mega expensive? Holy shit. What the fu- oh, okay. Oh, because it's pushing me like these really big name, like, editions, like anniversary editions and stuff. That's why. Alright, fuck you, Amazon. I'm gonna check you out on, like, barnesandnoble.com or something. I don't fucking know. Or maybe just, like, checking at a local bookstore. Remember, kids, folks, adults with money, support the local business first. Um, and your libraries and all that. Anyway, back on topic that isn't just parading some future faraway idea. Steampunk. Again, keep in mind, I don't really buy many things. I just, see what I can read online or what I already own. I have a library card, but I don't drive, and my library's a bit far away. I don't want to have to bother my family to go out all the time. Maybe I could ask some friends. Um, what was I saying? So, it's not like I don't read steampunk. It's just not my preferred genre. You all know I much rather, I vastly prefer your fantasy series in my head. That being said, I recently read some fanfic, right? Big fan of the fanfic scene, and immediately got inspired for another writing project to undertake. So maybe, no, I don't want to sound like an asshole, but, like, I don't know. I've been thinking about maybe putting work up there. My friends have been fucking gassing me up. I blame them for this. I don't know. I've been thinking about putting my work out there. Like some of the writing projects I actually have. I don't know. I'll have to consider that greatly. Work on them a lot more. See what I can do. I am an adult now. I gotta try to make this something I want anymore. Um, so I do read steampunk. It's not my preferred genre, but I prefer it a lot more than sci-fi. I said that with a bit of addiction, but I must clarify. I don't dislike sci-fi. I mentioned in the HFY video. I don't hate sci-fi. Far from it. I just prefer the sci and the fi. Like, if you consider it sci-fi, and you should because it is, SCP is my favorite brand of sci-fi. My issues are with future settings and a lot of redundancies. Maybe I'll get into this later on in its own separate video. My issues with varying genres, because I think I try to be positive on this channel. I don't know. Answer me in comments. Have I been positive? Exempting, of course, the outright negative video on Hunt Showdown. Out of love, I want to clarify. But I think I've been relatively positive overall. I don't know. Give me a second to drink some water. I'm out of my antacid medication, or whatever it actually is. So I'm feeling all sorts of weird. Ugh. I feeling like acid reflux and stuff like that again. But again, to finalize my point, I don't want to come at the steampunk angle with an inherently negative view just for the sake of it being steampunk. I don't like doing that, generally speaking. I do enjoy the genre. I do enjoy its conventions. How couldn't I? It's a very cool genre. Once again, I have my own steampunk writing thing going on in the background. Um, but keep in mind, it's not my favorite, and it's not what I read most of all. Now, let us get into it all. First of all, very important for your steampunk setting, the tech level. At what level is your steampunk setting? Now, is your steampunk setting a future setting? Because that can exist. Technically, real life is steampunk when you consider how we make energy. By the way, support nuclear energy endeavors. And the reason it's not more widespread is A, because of stonewalling and lobbying from fossil fuel companies, and B, because we admittedly, outside of Germany, Germany has no fucking excuse, don't have the infrastructure in place already to handle the load and other things like that from, an electrician can tell you a lot more, handle the load and strain and all and whatnot, infrastructure wise for all of these nuclear energy facilities. And by not advocating for them, the issue will never be fixed, and we will not be clean by 2030. Granted, at this rate, we're already not clean by 2030, but believe me, look into nuclear energy. It's a godsend. Probably literally. Shout out to being religious. I'm Catholic. Anyway, uh, the tech level is an important thing to get right for your story. Like I was saying, it could be a future setting where you're doing like a green future idea, which is what we all hope for. I genuinely do hope for that for our future, a green future setting where a lot of the energy is made through steampunk manners, and then that's where you get like the aesthetic. You built it all up, unions, whatnot. Or it can, but because of the future setting, you also do have some of the advents of future settings, like the typical like 3D printer sort of angle, like food processors, high-tech power lines, things like that. Because steampunk and electricity go hand in hand when you really break it down. Anyway, there is the Victorian era setting. This is likely the one you're thinking of. I want to say, I don't know. Modern steampunk is this muddled. I'll get into that. So, Victorian era setting, right, where there's aristocracy, there's nobility, there's like a peasant labor class, things like that. This is probably like the bog standard. It's very wishy-washy nowadays. And then there's like some sort of weird in between. There's like, mixing in fantastical elements, mixing in horror elements. That's done a lot less, sadly. I think everything could benefit from just a spot of horror, the best kind being body horror. Oh God, make it foul, make it disgusting, make me bleed. Anyway, ignoring my weird nature. Did you guys know I'm a monster fucker? Ignoring my weird ass like self. let's um let's actually get into the topic we're talking about, being tech level. It's important to establish early what your tech level is. That way it can frame your narrative a lot better. I made a motion with my hands like I'm cupping a baby bird and holding it between my fingers, like my fingers are a cage. Um, it's important to establish early on what the tech level is and then go out of your way to stay within your constraints or break them as necessary. Because sometimes it's important to break your conventions to emphasize a point further. This goes hand in hand with horror, because Lord Above knows I love horror. The only movies I watch anymore, a lot of the online YouTube content I consume is horror, indie horror, analog horror. What is it? It's analog horror, and then it's digital horror, and what have you. I love it. Early internet horror. I rewatch Marble Hornets every like 6 months, bro. I fucking ugh, so good, so good. It's important to establish early these tech levels so that way you can frame your narrative a lot better. That way you can world build a lot better when you know the upper and lower limits. Um, and that way to break them as necessary. What do I mean by breaking them as necessary? Well, first of all, it's a great way to make your main character a bit special. Not like a bit special, like retarded. That's not what I mean. If I wanted to say it, I'd just say it. Drinks water. I need a new bottle soon. Where is? I thought I had a spare. Oh no, that was the spare. I drank it. My water's over on the counter. Damn. It's right there. Oh, counter, desk, whatever. Um, it's to establish the tech level in order to like world build better, so that way you can understand how the tech reflects upon the people, how the people reflect upon the tech. What level of fidelity do these machines have, so that way we can understand how they're utilized in factory settings, in domestic settings, in cultural settings, trade, business, government, what have you, which are important for your story. I don't think they're because steampunk is generally like a fiction, fantasy, escapism thing. I don't think it's ever so far as to be the whole story, as much as I'd love that. Again, my autism comes from supply lines and trades and interconnection politicking, with using some leverage to get like factions to your side and sway them and all this. So I like the Eberron setting in D&D a lot. I think that's literally all I need to say. Um, it's an important thing to establish for your story. That way, your audience can understand a lot more what's happening at a glance. I will reiterate, I don't think it's wrong to have your first chapter or first 2 pages being an exposition chunk. That way we don't need to have a bunch of other shortcomings to explain our lore. I personally enjoy reading them. I don't mind the exposition chunk if it lets me engage in your setting a lot better. Grab me by my ribs and yank me around, baby. Let me get sucked into that fucking story, yeah? So, Magi-tech, the next point I'm going to talk about. What is Magi-tech? Because it's kind of like a dumb word. Magi-tech is artificers, um, basically. No, Magi-tech is No, Magi-tech is what artificers should be, and then the stupid fandom interpretation of artificers are, oh, herder, me make gun, me make explosives. DM, don't say no to me. Artificers can be a lot more. Um, Magi-tech is the idea of combining magic and technology together to be a homogeneous sort of thing. I don't mean it in the way of warring between the I was about to say Schola Progena. This isn't what like fucking Warhammer. Between arcane studies and engineering. Um, consider hydraulics. And consider hydraulics working a lot better, or maybe even just differently, as like being able to move both in the standard way of like the piston rising and falling, and also the piston moving side to side. I don't know if that's like actual shit we can do it right now, but imagine for a second that it's applicable through inscribing certain magical runes upon it in, I don't know, sanctified oils for some cool flavor. Shout out to the Mechanicus. Um, inscribing magical sigils and runes upon hydraulics to improve them ever, or like more so. Consider magical crystals powering certain steampunk automatons more than just the steam can, imprinting upon them a sort of low-grade AI. Things like that nature. I know AI is a hot button issue, but you know what I'm saying. Warforged constructs, living gargoyles, that sort of thing, powered by these magical gems, and then the world around them is still the big factorial steampunk setting, right? Uh, is your typical black powder six shooter, but also like a crystal cannon, or whatever you want to call them, right? Magi-tech is the blending of fantasy and steampunk together, and I don't like it. That's a personal thing. I'm very aware. I know how much people adore Magi-tech. It's not for me. I don't know why I don't like it. I prefer either magic as a whole, arcane arts, rune smithing, talisman weaving, talisman crafting, wicker weaving, all that, and steampunk engineering, right? Mechanisms, complex traps, firearms, that sort of thing. That being said, there's exceptions, and I write some exceptions, etc., etc., etc. I'm weird. My tastes aren't, one and done, cut and dry. There's a lot more to me than just this stupid visage I put up. That being said, I'm all sorts of fucked up in the brain cage. No, but aren't we all? Aren't we all, eh? I am getting mega, mega, mega off topic. Magician never reveals their secrets. Shout out to the Chuckle Nuts for real. Like some of the best content I watch. I love it. Admittedly, I'm weird, but I think it's funny. Where was I? What was I saying? What was I doing? What was I going with any of this? Yeah. Magi-tech, that's right. I don't personally like Mag. What the fuck did I accidentally do? Control Z, there we are. It was just messing with my notes. I don't personally like Magi-tech. That being said, absolutely feel free to throw it into your stories, especially if you like, especially if you can do it well, fiddle around with things, tweak them as need be. My likes aren't what you should cater to. You should cater to what you like doing because, you write what you know and you know what you like. As such, your story will probably flow a lot better if you write what you like. Or, challenge yourself or something. I don't know. I'm not the fucking arbiter of all that exists. It's the Lord above. Um, what was I on about? Magi-tech. There's a lot you can do with Magi-tech. I'm just fiddling with my wires, making sure everything's plugged in. There's a lot you can do with Magi-tech. An important thing to do early on is to, like your tech level, establish what's possible and what isn't with your Magi-tech. You don't want the magical elements to A, feel out of place, B, feel overpowering, especially in the steampunk setting. Unironically, I think, because I still do read Magi-tech, right? I don't like it personally, but I can stomach it for a story. I think it's better for the steampunk aspects to overwrite the magical aspects because it's fantasy blending with steampunk, not steampunk blending with fantasy. What do I mean? I'm saying, hmm. I'm saying on this, like, I am hungry apparently. I'm saying on this meat and cheese burrito, the fantasy is the beans you threw in just to give it a little bit more filling. The rest is the steampunk. Um, I think it's fine for the steampunk to overwrite the fantasy aspects because you're kind of here for the steampunk aspect. I'm pretty sure anyway. But do establish what is possible within the limits of this Magi-tech. Otherwise, it feels like just a cop-out answer. The writer just pulls out of the ass just to solve an issue they didn't think through fully, apparently. Um, there's a reason why I mentioned already with the tech level. Reason I mentioned already with the tech level to establish what's possible and what's plausible, what's achievable, is because measurable, achievable goals help frame your story in ways that make sense, especially for your audience, the person you're writing this for. Sorry, I'm taking so many breaks to sip water and choke down everything. I I ate frozen mango. My grandma started making these a lot. I like them. I think we just have too many mangoes and we need to freeze them so they don't go bad or something. She like dices them up, puts a little wooden dowel in the middle, and lets them freeze over, and it's like a little mango pop that you like chew on and eat. It's great. I had one 3 days ago. I have not stopped chewing on the wooden stick ever since. So my mouth is very dry, because I'm weird. Anyway, I don't know what else to say with her Magi-tech, so let's move on to main character now. I have a video on main characters. I don't think it's some of my best stuff, but I have a video on main characters. Flip through it if you'd like for a little bit more advice on this, but I'm focusing on a main character for a steampunk setting, world, what have you. Now, it's important to establish early because steampunk relies, I fully believe, relies, well, at least it used to, absolutely, definitely used to, giving it was a critique on imperialism. Steampunk relies heavily on culture and class, like divides, to make your point. So it's very important when making a main character, A, that they fit the plot, the setting, what have you. B, that you establish early their place in the world and then how they go upon and like break through their place, either rise above their station or like overthrow shit from up top, whatever, what have you. It's important to establish early their station. So, is your main character a low-born laborer, like the daughter of a foreman? To clarify, low-born laborer, comma, or the daughter of a foreman, because it's very easy to want to lump in foremen with the rest of the labor caste for good reason. Foremen are in the factories, foremen are working. They, but they're not like a middle management. They're sort of like they're given a lot of odd. Okay, keep in mind, believe it or not, I'm not a Victorian era child who, by the way, could kick your ass for your cigarettes. Um, keep in mind that I am not knowledgeable on workers, like like how workers construct them. I'm not knowledgeable on factories all too much. However, I believe this is the case that foremen have a certain level of autonomy. Takes a sip of water. That they're like the machine shop chiefs, pretty much. Crew pit chief, whatever. That they are the guys that kind of run the show while also still having like the job to do. Maybe they're over in like the maintenance bay running maintenance on big heavy pipes or some shit like that, but they're also delegating tasks to those around them to get them solved quickly, keeping track of all their workers' needs, making sure they're like union leadership, making sure they're being met, and like putting people on rotation, taking them off certain jobs. The one you talk to when you say, "Boss, I gotta go home. My wife's dying of dysentery," and he goes, "You have 1 hour to go home because of our awful working conditions." And then you come back, and after the hour, like, "Boss, my wife died." He goes, "Damn, I'm sorry for you. Catch me on our 2 hour break after our shift, and I'll go drink with you or something." Whatever. They're okay. How do I actually want to put this? They're like the upper crust of the laborers, separate from them, right? Literally just like a commander, I guess I could just tell you. They're like the guy to go to. They're like the leader, but the leader in the way that there's a disconnect from the group to the leader, if you get what I'm trying to say. So like if your character was a laborer, they would look up to and like respect, like presumably respect, but they would absolutely take orders from the foreman. Whereas the foreman would still have to take orders from the lower, but collectivism and all that. Whatever. The point I'm trying to make is foremen are not just a flavor of laborer. They are a cut above, but still a huge swath below the aristocracy, whatever. Is your main character a laborer, or like the daughter of a foreman, or like the son of a merchant, right? Who is someone going up and up and up and up. Do they own land? And if they own land, they're absolutely like some fucking nobility, aristocracy, that sort of shit. Are they the mayor, right? Are they the fucking president? It is very, very, very incredibly important to establish what no to establish the station of your main character, because a lot of steampunk heavily relies on the class divide story to tell. And I know that's getting into setting, but that's still partially getting to main character. Now, actually building and fleshing out your main character. First of all, this is a world very unlike our own, where machinery is very important, very big in the day-to-day life, right? That Torio shit and all that. So, establishing early what they do, their job, specifically, because that makes the job maketh the man, which I know is not an actual quote, but hey, that quote has so many different variations and retellings that I could say anything and it has been quoted already. So, they'll reflect their job will reflect on them. If they're in the machine yard, they're probably like, have a pretty good camaraderie with those around them. If they're in like a scrapper, they're probably pretty standoffish and likely well built for a malnourished laborer. Very very willing to stick up for themselves, or they're a scrawny weasel like looking for little rat holes and hidey holes to get out of trouble, scamming people and flaking at the first sign of trouble, right? Because again, there can be two different flavors or like any flavor in between from different settings and like where they come from, shit like that. Um, but also, like I was trying to say before, distracting myself as I do so often, this is a world very much unlike our own. So they will have different cultural practices, things like that. Um, what am I trying to say? First of all, food, right? You get into food. I already have a food video. Look at the food video. Please actually look at the food video. I'm so very proud of the food video. Uh, it's the one that says like rambling about fantasy food and stories, but what my throat is sore. I haven't done these in a while. Oh no. Don't worry, folks. I'll have a lot more for you in the future. Look out for that Cosmic Horror one. I'm very excited for it. Um, the way they dress too will be very different. right? They dress in a lot of different ways. For one, accessories like gloves and goggles are probably very common, especially considering, factories are constantly pumping out not smog because it runs on steam. Constantly pumping out plumes of the steam, making it, probably like, a bit stingy on the eyes. So you, and I know, I just said smog, it's steam, but steam's hot and all that. So goggles are probably like a very common accessory. Gloves for all like the machine work, likely apron, things like that. Durable clothes, or at least more durable than we're wearing right now. There's no linens here. Alongside what their cities look like, which will then reflect upon themselves, right? Um, for some reason, I never really see. Ugh, nauseous. Steampunk worlds have cars. Is that a me thing? I never see that. They're always like walking, or they take a trolley, or a. Ugh, I just stepped on something. Something being a bottle. It made a loud noise. I didn't like it. Or a trolley, or like bug. That got me. That threw me off my fucking line of thought. They're either walking or they're. Yes, I never see them with cars for some reason. Is that just a me thing? I never see them have any like cars. It's usually like some sort of trolley or like inner city like a rail car system. So even their commute could be wildly different than you. I'm presuming you're American and drive to work. Um, Even their like commute from place to place is wildly different from you. And then because they're emphasized to walk, they're sorry, I had to choke something down. Because they're emphasized on walking, their distance to important things around them is likely a lot shorter and can be reflected upon. Like walking is a very normal activity. Bicycles, right? There should be like bike clubs, not biker clubs like biker gangs. I mean like bike clubs, like what happened shortly after. It's a feminist movement, right? The bicycle helped a lot actually with improving with the feminist movement, helping women get equal rights and all that. Look into it. It's actually very interesting. But right, a lot of what they do will likely end up being different. Granted, the bulk of it will be the same as we are still people, but it's very important to establish early the main character has been shaped by the world in many different ways than we would have been, than if they had been born with us. So like common idioms would probably be different. Slang absolutely should be different. They should call shit scrapheads, stuff like that, right? They should call automatons clankers, but everyone should call automatons clankers. I'm not a robot fucker, okay? Until robots get a sense of taste and a desire for culinary arts, they're not people in my eyes. Until you can eat like me, you're not a person. You're close. I'll give you this much. You're smart enough to like be almost a person, but until you taste and eat the way I do, you're not a person. Watch this like age poorly, and then watch it age perfectly. My daughter will not be bringing home a robot. No fucking clankers on my watch, unless they can eat and taste my food. This is not a bit. This is not to keep up with the weird food fascination I have. I am Mexican. It matters very much to me whether or not they can eat like I do, and that is not a bit. I genuinely mean that. If they can't eat my grandmother's delicious fucking tamales, you're not dating them. Ever. Let's talk about setting. Let highlight it so I know where I did I and then highlight it so I know where I am. So setting is very, very, very important within the steampunk genre, isn't it? Of course it is. The setting is a person, practically. It is a living, breathing person in its own right. It always is, but especially when you're going into like fancy worlds like steampunk is. What am I saying? Well, well, let's put it kinda a little bit something like this. Uh, yeah, this isn't fucking Earth no more, right? It may be Earth in all but name. It may be Earth in name only, but it isn't the world we know. Call it alt history, whatever you want, but this shit ain't the world we got. It is important to establish that early and important to establish how. But that is a little bit beyond setting and goes into like world building, which is different than setting. So let's talk about setting. Where is it set literally? As in, what is our scope? How big are we setting our sites? Which lines up with the plot a little bit, but let's talk about just the setting for right now. So, where is it set literally? Are we restricting ourselves to a city? Or are we going big and we doing a continent? Or are we just doing a country? Or what tales can we tell if we restrict ourselves to naught but a block? Because there's a lot you can do when you narrow your scope, and just as much you can do when you broaden your horizons. You may be thinking right here and now, cheese underscore stick 1. Quite frankly, you're fucking stupid. How can it be the same if you both narrow and widen your scope? Well, this is because there is a lot less to talk about when you narrow your scope, but you can really extrapolate on and elaborate when you narrow your scope. You can focus on things a lot more, have a scrutinizing gaze, and benefit your story through that means is if you just take it a lot slower, a lot more patient, and carefully weave the threads together for a fine story. By the way, I've been squinting through a little hole in my fingers. I made one with my whole hand when I said widen your scope, and I have one little itty bitty tiny pinprick with just my fingers and thumbs when I said narrow your scope. Now, if we widen our scope, and this is me slowly opening that up to encompass the whole hand, if we widen our scope, we'll have a lot more to talk about, but conversely are unable to go through as much detail as we would like because there's just so many moving parts to balance. Some stuff must be shunted off to the wayside in order to still be able to tell an engaging story. Now, this is a lot differently if you're just doing world building, if you're just making a module, if you're just making a tabletop setting. Because within that way, the reader, the audience, your players are able to fill in the gaps themselves. If you give them the support structure, they'll go wild filling it in how they like. Of course, your players will not fill in everything. It would be foolish to assume that. That's why like a bunch of modules are modular, believe it or not. So you can focus on one aspect of the story with a scrutinizing gaze and you throw in your stuff yourself if you'd love to. But what I'm trying to get at here, the obvious point, is that it is very, very, very difficult to point out and discuss and make good on as many promises as you can with your scope very wide. But you're able to touch up on a lot of points. You can throw a wide net, play around with things, and then free what you don't like, and then focus on what you do like. Now, you may be thinking, cheese underscore stick. Well, that just really sounds like the best of both worlds, doesn't it? No, not really. Because nothing is the best of both worlds. Make that abundantly clear right now. Wide scopes only work for the stories they work with, because sometimes by making the scope wide and then only focusing on what you want to, it breaks reader immersion, it makes you seem sloppy, it makes everything be clunky, it feels half-hearted, it looks shallow. As opposed to if you just made the wide net and then played with it on a grander scale, as opposed to then immediately, narrowing down. Having this wide setting, this is also plot, now that I'm thinking about it, whatever, this is plot and setting. Um, having this wide scope really only benefits like these grander schemes, whereas that narrow scope tells a lot more personal stories, and it really is just what your plot demands of you. Now, setting. Again, time period, where they are physically, and importantly, the players within the setting. I mentioned before, a sort of like union coalition idea. Pretty obvious for a steampunk setting, but how do we take this and run with it? Well, let's start small. Who makes up the union? Is it the machine yard? In my head, the machine yard is where like the big is where the big machines are kept. The big lathes, right, to carve out the materials used for expanding, as well as like the precise no the big are lathes. I'm not a steel worker. I'm not a very hands-on sort of guy. I'm quite waifish, actually. Not to be confused with wifeish. That being said, I wouldn't mind being a house husband. I'm very waifish and very not physically fit. Yet again, I reiterate, I have an eating disorder and I weigh sub 100 pounds as an adult human male. I am 5'5". I am not, but believe it or not, I'm not very masculine, traditionally speaking. Um, so I don't really know what I'm talking about when I say like the machines and what they do. I have a cursory knowledge from watching a bunch of I Did a Thing. That guy's a fucking psycho. I love him. Anyway, in my head, like in the unions, like the people in the machine yard, those who man the large scale equipment for like cutting the steel required for expanding upon your city, alongside maintenance and things of that nature, uh, as well as the production line for a bunch of high fidelity materials you'll need, like ceramics or like treated fabrics, things like that. Now, how many are in the union and how focused are they? And then that's a faction. And then, well, a faction forms in response to something. In response to, let's say, now the aristocracy. So let's form the aristocracy. How cohesive are they? Let's say not very cohesive because we love the idea of court politics. Now, this means within the faction of aristocracy, we have a bunch of back-poking snakes who'd love nothing more than to slander the whore next to her just so she gets a little bit of the spotlight in a better angle. So then within the faction of aristocracy, we have smaller, minor factions. In this case, the houses, the different noble bloodlines, noble air quotes, the oil barons, the steel barons, right? The heads of transportation that run varying things. So there could be a story to tell here of a cohesive union working with and plotting within the various houses in order to tip the hand in order to tip the hand and the scales to better their position. But as fun as that is, and I genuinely do think that's very quite fun. I love the little corporate espionage aspect we have going on here. Why let the aristocracy have all the fun with the inter-faction politics, intra-faction politics? Inter and intra are different. Internet, intranet. Internet being the international network, i.e., Google and like going to like social media and stuff like that, connect people around the world. Intranet would be like a like business forum, basically. To clarify, I mean a specific business and their forum for their employees to lounge on or something like that. Intra faction. INTRA hyphen faction. Politicking. Why let the union be exempt from that? Because there is also a great story to tell in there if the union isn't cohesive, as would naturally happen. Again, you are not beholden to the rules of reality, as would naturally happen. So, how does that establish itself? Is there a sorts of pride in your work? Are the drill boys and the lathe folks at odds with how they think the future should be run? Um, and how much are they fond of each other? Is anybody else stoking the flames in the machine yard, or are they really trying to bring each other together, but fuck, they just won't budge from their stances? making this a lot trickier to organize proper boycotts, to organize walkouts, to organize strikes, things like that, to like collaborate properly. And who's taking advantage of that? Here's where your main character can step in. As we've finished setting the scene and then building up the plot, who is your main character? And how do they step in and take advantage? Because your main characters should be proactive. We love reading proactive readers. That's why I fucking hate. To be fair, I don't mind Harry Potter. All right, I actually kind of like it. Right, I read it as a kid. You know, who didn't? So I mean, like, obviously, I have a fucking heart. Right, I sympathize with my trans folks. I'm friends with a few trans people myself. Shout out to you. I'm not gonna name you by name, but you're the other one who you watch my stuff at work. That being said, I like the Harry Potter setting, as basic as it is. I don't like Harry though. He's such a fucking reactionary main character, and it sucks. Hermione should have been the fucking MC. I swear, Lord, but she's the only thing that kept those fuckers alive throughout their entire time in and out of Hogwarts. They accidentally almost killed her in year one, sending her to the bathrooms crying, and where the troll was. They happened to save her after a lot of errors, and then Hermione also fucking saved herself, really. They happened to save her, and from that point forward, she made it her mission to make sure these morons don't fucking kill themselves throughout their entire years at Hogwarts. She is the only reason they lived, and her ass should have never gotten with Ron because she deserved way better. Ron's not a character. Mrs. Weasley is a dear, though. That was a huge tangent. What was I on about? Your main character should be reactionary. In the setting I've painted for you, of the machine yard being at odds with two main faction leaders opposing, whereas the rest of the minor factions, say like the Belt Boys, who are in charge of the conveyor belt, maintenance crew, who is really just tired of all this shit and is maybe plotting to boost up the lathe crew because they're a bit more level-headed, whereas they don't think that the drill boys like are wrong to have this stance. They just think that this is not the right time to have things like that. Um, your main character can now come in and be proactive. But again, who are they? What are their goals? What do they align with? They could genuinely just straight up align themselves with the drill boys because they believe in what the drill boys have to say. Hoorah, we are strong as one. We can make change. I want to see my wife more than once a week, sort of thing. Or they could just see this as a point to get back at the rancid bitch who ruined their life. Someone in the aristocracy, maybe they're cast off, banished from the noble house, shit like that. Depending on who your main character is, paints how they take advantage of this situation um, in a suitably steampunk manner. I think it's kind of obvious, like the shit I like reading now. um, anyway, I hope you get what I'm trying to say and like how the setting makes the factions, makes the plot, right? Because now we're going to move on to the theme. As I keep bringing up, steampunk has its roots in messages on the dangers of imperialism. The biggest clue is the heavy use of gates and walls. It's sort of a standard for a steampunk city to have a big wall. Have you ever considered why? It's sort of standard for a steampunk city to have these automatons built and made by the aristocracy to be a sort of police force. Have you stepped back and considered why? It is pretty cut and dry for these aristocracy, the higher ups, the mayor, what have you, to be in a like almost castle rampart sort of thing, separate from the people below that they are ostensibly the leaders of. Have you stepped back to consider why? It is a pretty big thing. It is a pretty intensive thing to run the great chain of industry. As such, it would need more and more, constantly expanding upon itself until it becomes a great and large carcass fit to burst and spread its remnants anew somewhere else. Um, Steampunk has its core with someone else could tell you this a lot better. Someone's more well versed in this sort of thing, but I'll still do my best. Steampunk has its roots in imperialism and like the dangers of it. It's pretty cut and dry that there's a stark divide with the ruling class and the laborers. Not that I'm a commie, but they got some points. Um, and it's where the punk comes from is your main character breaking the mold, making change, putting the line in the stand, and bucking it up afterwards, sort of thing. Uh, no rebel without a cause shit here. They've got a cause, and they're gonna tell you it, or beat it into you maybe with a wrench and some lug nuts. So, what am I really trying to say? Theme matters immensely in steampunk because the wheels are set in motion. Please take advantage of it. It's not some. It's not a fantasy. It's a story. I'm gonna. I'll with you. The reason I wanted to do a video tonight is because I got sad again. I didn't want another meltdown. Especially the first of the month. Well, it's two now because the second of the month now because it's 1 in the morning. But I didn't want to melt down on the first of the month as that's a bad omen. So I distracted myself. Yeah, I distracted myself. I can melt down now. I'm gonna cry later. Um, Theme is important for steampunk because the gears are all rolling in the right way to tell these sorts of tales. Same with cyberpunk, but you already kind of know that a lot better for cyberpunk. Thank you, Cyberpunk 2077. Never played it. Also doesn't interest me. Not a cyberpunk guy. Got a friend who's into it though. I got a few. Anyway, theme that I keep getting off topic for this. I end up just scrapping the theme segment and just talking over about whatever. It's very easy to put in the themes and then work with them, especially if you're working within the conventions of your setting. The conventions of your setting are not a gilded birdcage. They're a house spun of straw that you put yourself in willingly because outside it's fucking boiling hot and the straw does a great way at dissipating the heat. What the fuck am I on about? I'll tell you what I'm on about. Stop trying to break genre conventions. It doesn't help anyone. Doesn't help the reader, doesn't help the author, doesn't help your story. The conventions are put in place for a reason for you to take advantage of. They're they're pretty carefully made and they're there for a good reason. They frame the story and they emphasize things where they need to be emphasized to help you with that compelling narrative you're writing. Please see to it that you think carefully ahead of time what the theme of your story is and then play to their strengths. You'll thank yourself and me later. You don't gotta thank me though. What I will appreciate you doing is I keep asking, nobody's done it so far, is put in the comments like ideas for me to do. I am running out fast. Anyway, let's talk about antagonist and finish the supporting cast. So the antagonist is key to any good story. Every good story has a fucking phenomenal antagonist. Or antagonistic force. In this case, it's pretty cut and dry. Usually it will end up being the aristocracy. Don't make it the laborers because that's a whole can of worms that you're opening up. Or maybe you can do it right. I don't know. Um, don't do a whole white savior thing. So, antagonists for steampunk are pretty easy, though how big they are depends on your scope. Again, if you're narrowing yourself to a city block, it would be whoever's like oversees it. If you're on the scale of a continent, it could be opposing countries. Or hell, even opposing continents, or opposing countries on the continent, whatever. Or it could be some external force, man versus beast and all of that. Given that steampunk lets you play with a lot of things, especially if you're mixing in fantastical elements, as I want to do. Though keep in mind that there should still be a human element to the antagonist of the steampunk setting, because steampunk really lends itself to these human antagonists. Like once you break away behind the faceless, unattainable position that they hold, who is at the top, who is the cause, maybe not the cause, but the perpetrator of all this shit. And really break down, go through who your antagonists are. Are they a person? Are they a group? Are they an oligarchy? Are they someone elected? Are they a dictator? Are they an autocrat? Do they genuinely have the best interests of the people at mind? But there's so many bells and whistles and twists and turns. They are forced into doing the shit they are now, making a point on, like, I don't know, bureaucracy, politicking internationally, isolationism, and like when you need to be a like public superpower or whatever, global player, shit like that. Because a lot of the time steampunk antagonists really just fall flat. They're just oil baron McEvil rich guy. We're, while not really getting into why they're doing it beyond, I want money. And I've mentioned before how I think sometimes bad guys should just be dickheads. But for steampunk, I really don't think that's the case. Steampunk has the capacity to tell these interesting, very rich stories. That's why I don't like steampunk, is because a lot of authors don't do that. Steampunk has the capacity to tell these very engaging, very rich, very character-driven stories, but often doesn't, which is what upsets me so. I can't help you for your antagonist because that requires, it's very plot specific. I can just tell you to focus on them a lot more. They're a character too. They're a main character too. Treat them with the respect it deserves. The supporting cast. No man is an island. We live through the connections we form. Now, that's enough fortune cookie wisdom for me to get into what I'm talking about. The supporting cast is very important within the steampunk setting because, well, when you're wheeling dealing, because as I presume your main characters are, when they're tackling and toppling regimes and being this sort of like driving force, who follows in the wake? Who is the pilot fish that follow the sharks? Who are the scavengers feeding off of what you couldn't finish? Right? Who's fucking each other? Anyway, the supporting cast. Who, genuinely, who is the supporting cast? What do they do? What is their affiliation in relation to your main character? Things like that that need to be answered. Because it's important to establish the supporting cast, what they do, what their purpose is, because they matter immensely to your story. Not as much as your main character, of course, but the side cast shouldn't be forgotten, as it happens so often. There shouldn't be one-dimensional characters, as happens so often. I'm looking at you, most anime now. I don't really know where I was going with this, which is why I saved it for last, because I don't know what to talk about for it. Is it clear that this one was a last-minute idea? But please keep in mind to make your supporting cast, build them up properly, and play them straight as characters, because it, again, steampunk really lends itself to having characters to sink your teeth into. Grab them by the ribs, yank them around. The ribs will hold, don't worry, they're strong bones. So, thank you for listening all the way through if you have. I hope this has helped you in some ways to like the sort of the benefits that come with the steampunk setting and all that. Again, keep in mind that I am not the arbiter of all that is true about steampunk. You know, you're the writer. I believe in you. Go do what you want. Stuff like that. Mark down your inspiration. The same shit I keep parroting ad nauseum. Likely get hyped for that cosmic horror video. I know I am. Anyway, this is where I bid you good night. Have a good one, my freaks. That's you guys.